Yo, so guys, welcome back to another video. This is another infographic show reaction, and this one is what if the US paid off its debt? And I've been seeing in recent reactions, I don't know if it was from, it's sort of ingrained in my memory, either it's from comments under my videos or comments under certain videos, or it's been mentioned in certain videos that I've reacted to, and it's to do with like US debt and like some of the crazy sort of figures that they are. And I don't know, it just sort of piqued my sort of interest in this because I feel like every country in the world is in debt. I don't actually know if that's the case, but oh well, my Now TV is every country in debt. I swear, like every country is in debt. Oh, but that's it. Oh. Oh shit. So it's not to other countries, it's actually to their own citizens and to their own banks and stuff. Wait, okay. Oh wow, this is going to be interesting. I did not know that. I thought it was going to be like debts between countries. But I mean, yeah, we're going to see in this film for sure. So maybe this is going to sort of show how citizens will get a lot richer, but the country in the whole will like get, I don't know, poorer, but that wouldn't make sense. I don't know. I don't really know what to expect here, to be honest. We're going to check this out. Again, I'm interested in seeing this reaction, and I've had this suggested a few times, and I just thought it could be a really sort of, it's a kind of, not a different one, but it's just like one that I don't really know the details of it. And yeah, I just thought it could be a fun kind of reaction basically. But yeah, I hope you guys are going to enjoy. Links to my Instagram, my Twitter in the description, links to my second channel, and links to my Patreon. I've made my Patreon, it's very new. I've got Patreon only reactions, basically videos that get blocked on here. And I'm also planning to do some documentary type reactions from like Netflix or shows that people want me to react to, because I've had suggestions for that. So yeah, the links are in the description for that for those interested. But let's get into this one. Let's see what this is about, and yeah, man, let's see what if the US paid off its debt, man.
This episode is brought to you by Skillshare. The first 1,000 people to sign up
Skillshare
using the link in
all
the
the time.
description will get.
Have they got some kind of like? The skill should just work with the infographic show at this point, because I swear they sponsor every single
Their
show.
first 2 months free. All
Shout out,
countries
man.
flirt with a national deficit at one time or another. But the USA, with more than 21 trillion.
21 trillion, not billion. I see. I can't even comprehend that kind of money. US debt. Because this is like two years ago, maybe 27 trillion now. Bro, it's went up 6 trillion in 2 years. In nearly 3, oh no, nearly 3 years, sorry, should I say, not 2 years. Bro, that is wild. Okay. We're gonna see why. God damn.
$1 billion in debt as of March 2018 is having a relationship with debt so close they're practically in bed together. This mega figure is greater than its economic output, and yes, it seems to keep on rising as a general trend. But how did the debt grow that high? And is there any way to bring the balance sheet back to zero? Why do countries get themselves into debt? And what are the methods for paying off the deficit? Today we take a look at the events leading up to the accumulation of this gigantic debt, and we determine if there is any way for the US to turn this massive deficit around in this episode of the infographic show, What If the US Paid Off Its Debt? Debt is created by either excessive spending or deep tax cuts. Sometimes, tax cuts are justified in order to spur the economy out of a recession. In 1939, the US debt was at $40 billion, and by the end of the Second World War, this rose to $271 billion.
Shit.
After some fluctuations, it was still at $271 billion in 1957. But by 1977, it had risen to $699 billion.
See, that's
the
a lot.
US has
Yeah,
a
that's
long
a
and rich
lot.
history.
But you compare that to now, and obviously inflation and stuff, so that would be higher in the current day. But you see this there, and then you think of how it is now. 27, it says 21 here, but 27 trillion in 2021. Bro, that's ridiculous. Again, you can't comprehend that kind of
history
amount.
of spending heavily on military. Since the nation's existence since 1776, it has spent 225 years at war and just 21 years in peace. That's 94% of the country's time at war and just 6% at peace. US debt spiked after the 9/11 attacks when America increased military spending to launch its well-organized
sense,
War
it
on
does.
Terror campaign. Between 2001 and 2017, the War on Terror cost $1.9 trillion, so it appears that much of the US debt is incurred by massive spending in an aggressive defense policy over a long sustained period of time. While some argue that jobs would be lost by a reduced expenditure on defense, a counter-argument is that other industries could be created. Other factors, besides war, contributing to the rise in debt include the $24.7 billion Hurricane Katrina disaster and a $350 billion bank bailout. The current financial situation is, however you look at it, a bit of a mess. The country hasn't always been broke. In January of 1835,
It's weird how the US is seen as broke, but also it's like the richest country, the most powerful country. It's like, I'm sort of like finding it hard to sort of see both sides. Again, he's going to explain it to me, but again, the debt in terms. I just want to see the UK, because obviously the UK is a lot smaller. UK debt. Wait, how much debt is the UK? Main point has exceeded 2 trillion for the first time. So in 2 trillion pounds of debt, which is like higher in dollars. Oh wow, so it's not actually low here, but you compare it to the US, mate.
the US government succeeded in paying off its entire national debt in full for the first time in its history, but slipped back into the red again shortly thereafter. In January of 1836, the national debt was sitting at a comparatively tiny $37,000. From then on, the American debt fluctuated a bit for several years, but remained relatively low until around 1863. Shortly after 1948, America began to pay down the massive debt incurred in the 1930s and 40s, but shortly after 1982, the debt began to build. From 1992 to 2000, the debt began to be paid back again, only for that huge spike after 2001 and 2008, and the rest, as they say, is history. So just what is national debt? Government debt is money that has not been raised by taxes and has been spent on goods and services. This money has been borrowed. When a government runs a budget deficit, it costs them more to administer the country than it receives in revenue. To make good this shortfall, the government has two choices. One, it prints more money, or two, it borrows more money. Although printing more money sounds simple.
I mean, printing more money sounds like the obvious answer, but I swear that would cause insane inflation, right? Like that's what caused the inflation, like the Great Depression and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if it was printing money, but that kind of sort of stuff, or it would cause that. I think that's the case. Maybe I have to do its own video, but he's probably going to explain it. But maybe if there's a video that's solely sort of focused on that, I would check that out as well, just to sort of understand that.
Enough to do, doing so would lead to galloping or hyperinflation. Galloping inflation is when the price of goods and services rises more than 10% per month, and hyperinflation is when the price of services or goods rises more than 50% in a month. To print and distribute more money leads to inflation if there is no corresponding economic growth to justify the surplus cash. Instead, governments issue bonds that investors invest in. The government then gets the money from the investors, and the investors receive an interest on the funds borrowed over a period of time. Just over half of the current $21 trillion US debt is owed to US investors, with the remainder half owed to investors outside the United States. The more the debt grows, the more is spent on interest repayments and less is allocated to what the government should really be doing with taxpayers' money, investing in local public services. Over time, governments risk running into bankruptcy and seeing their economy collapsing. The US has declared itself bankrupt 5 times since its formation. Once when it could not meet foreign debts, and 4 times due to internal debts. The first time the US became bankrupt was in 1790, and the last occasion was in 1933. But America is not alone. A total of 83 countries have become bankrupt in the last 200 years. Debt can be reduced in one of 2 ways. Debt is forgiven.
What does becoming bankrupt do to the country, though? Like, is poverty just through the whole, like poverty just go through the whole country, everyone loses their jobs and all that kind of stuff? And is there chances of that happening at the US now, or is it like at a point where it's just so powerful it wouldn't be possible? I guess it still can though, can't it? I don't know, like, it's an interesting one for sure.
Given or debt is paid back.
It really is.
Most of the people, countries, and organizations who are owed money by the states are unlikely to forgive the debt, so the US will probably have to pay it back at some point if it is to reduce the deficit to zero. For a government to start paying back its debt, it will need to spend less than it earns or receives in taxation and run on a budget surplus. Seems simple enough, But the problem is that society becomes accustomed to the level of government spending, especially if they directly benefit from it. Nobody wants to give up what they already have, and nobody wants to pay more taxes. Society in general wouldn't wish to see a cut in spending on healthcare, schools, and other essential services. Cutting back on spending leads to less votes and a loss of power to the next politician who promises more spending. This is how the problem escalates. So if the American government somehow paid back its debt, then the taxpayer would see more of their tax dollars spent on local government services and less of that dollar paid back to investors in interest. The overall standard of living should also rise for most Americans. Voters would need to accept short-term financial pain for long-term gain. But with the American political system set up as it is, a new president could come along and put all of those good years to waste in a manic spending frenzy. It has happened in the past and will probably happen again in the unlikely event that America managed to reduce its debt to zero. But who could pay off this rising national debt? Really?
It's kind of hard, like he sort of explained. You have like one sort of government and one president sort of saying, we're going to sort of pay this debt back, and like you said, short-term pain, long-term gain. But then you have like another president saying, we're going to keep doing this and you're just going to keep having it how it is. It's probably good how it is now. You're going to have less sort of taxes, but it's just going to stay the same, and it's probably going to overall get worse with the debt going higher and higher. But I don't know, how does a country get out of this situation at this point? It's so much money. Like, how? How does a country get out of this kind of situation?
You have two choices. The lower and middle class taxpayers could pay off the debt through tax increases or by inflation. Or the big business monopolies, high class politicians, and corporations could settle it through targeted taxation. Of course, politicians are like everybody else. They don't want to pay taxes, and they don't want the corporations, lobbyists, and high net worth individuals who put them where they are to pay taxes either. To heavily tax the poor normally leads to sharp rises in inflation and a shrinking economy, which is bad for everyone.
And of course it's the poor. It's the poor who get all the sort of like taxes and all this kind of stuff. It's just crazy how that can be the solution. You got the rich like there, but let's go for the poor and like the middle class and whatever. Like, it's just, it doesn't make sense to me like how that's their solution to it, but that's how governments work, isn't it? That's how society is, and it's absolutely messed the hell up, man. It really is when you actually deep it, bro.
Paying the debt in full today wouldn't actually make too much of a difference in the economy itself, but it would speak volumes for US creditworthiness should a crisis such as the 2008 financial crisis occur once more. So what would happen if the US paid off all of its debt? The simple answer is not much. The country would function as it does now and will probably put in action plans to increase its debt once again. Countries function normally while in debt as long as the debt is kept to a manageable level and it keeps up with its repayments. The USA definitely walks a fine line trying to balance its budget, and if you're like most people, you could probably use a little help organizing your own finances. With classes to help you manage.
Shout out to him getting his money, yeah, you know how it is. Securing the bag. It's an interesting one. I want to see like how money, I want to see like why printing money doesn't work. I actually see this in the thingy here. Maybe I'll check this video out soon. From Wonder Why we can't just print money to pay off debt. I kind of understand it causes inflation and stuff, but I want to know the in-depth details of why that actually happens. Mr. Beast 2019, buying a homeless man a house. Mr. Beast 2050, paying off the US debt. Running a budget deficit, the government has two options: printing more money, borrowing money. How about free, spend less money? This man's audio is killing my ears. Let's be honest, they're not going to pay it off. But like as he said, maybe like paying it off wouldn't actually create that much of a difference as to how it is now. And maybe that's how the government sort of see it. They're like, well, if we pay it off, not much is going to change. So it's just like, why do we just keep going in the debt? But I just don't know how. How it's got so much higher. It's 6 more trillion from this video. Those that fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Winston Churchill. Real question is, why are there 2 Hawaiis in the thumbnail? So the US is a giant college student. That's a good way to put it. Not even Thanos can make this debt disappear. This is still cheaper than a student loan. I don't thank you for the like. People always thank each other for the like 653 for the answer. You're welcome. But yeah, an interesting video for sure. What are your thoughts on this? Do you reckon it's just one of those things that's just going to be there and it's just unnoticeable? Because to be fair, with the UK, I just don't know if debt is just, I don't know, it's just hard. I guess it's just your taxes will go up and like certain things will go up, like inflation and stuff for certain products. But yeah, it's a weird one for sure. But what are your thoughts on this? Do you reckon this affects you daily? Well, it probably does because your taxes and stuff. But like, I don't even know what to say. It's just a weird one, but yeah. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this reaction. If you want more stuff like this, let me know in the comments. And yeah, until next time, like, subscribe.